Hey everyone, Chelsea here from Sew Simple Home. Today we are going to make a fun do-it-yourself luggage tag. So here is the finished one. It holds a small, about business card size cardboard that you can put your personal information on for when you travel, your name, your phone number, your address, whatever you need. And it's in a clear vinyl cover. And then to make it so it's a little bit more private, this closes up, and then you can put this on your luggage so that it's a little bit sturdier and your information stays concealed. And you can do it the opposite way as well. You can turn it around this way if you want your information seen, right? And so it's kind of the similar idea. Okay, so that's what we're going to make today. So the first thing you're going to need is the pattern. You can get the pattern for free on our website. I'll leave a link in the description. You're going to need the main tag piece. You're going to need the vinyl pocket piece. You're going to need the luggage tag piece, which is this piece right here. And then you're going to need about 5 inches of matching bias tape. And bias tape is really easy to make yourself. So if you have fabric that matches, that's what I did with this pattern. You can make your own bias tape, and I will leave a link in the description so that you can make your own bias tape. So I actually have already cut out all of my pieces here. So they're ready to go. So my bias tape is going to be this fun green. Then this is my strap, then my little piece of vinyl, and my 2 main pieces. You also need a piece of interfacing for the main piece, and then a long strip of interfacing for the strap. All right, now the first step here is to add interfacing to our materials. So I'm using my Easy Press Mini. That's super handy. It's one of my favorite sewing tools. I don't have to get up and go to the iron. It's just right here next to me. I don't burn myself as much as I do on a regular iron, so it's a really great tool, and I'll leave a link in the description, so if you want to go check it out yourself, you can. Adding interfacing to my strap is the first thing I'm going to do here, and then I'm just going to add interfacing to one of my main pieces. I don't have to do it to both. You could if you wanted a really heavy duty luggage tag. Interfacing helps give it a little bit of weight, a little bit more stability. The fabric's a little heavier, but for this project it's important because we're going to do a small buttonhole that we'll use for the strap. So it's not a big deal. You can handle it. I'm going to walk you through it, so don't be scared. You're going to do great. So all of my pieces are ready. When we're talking about vinyl, here's my little piece of vinyl. You don't need very much. Vinyl will melt if it's ironed. So if I want to, this one's kind of wrinkled. So I actually just put a piece of material over the top of it, and then I can just press it, and that'll help get some of the wrinkles out. And then I will usually just leave it flat because you can see it'll start to move around and unflatten itself if you play with it too much. So I'm just going to leave it there for right now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to work with my bias tape. And like I said before, I'll leave a link in the description if you want to make your own bias tape. If you don't want to make your own bias tape, that's totally fine. You can buy some at the store. This bias tape is just over an inch. It's probably about 1.5 inches wide. And I'm going to just use my little bias tape maker here and shove it through. And sometimes it'll go through, and sometimes I need to give it a little push. Okay, to start, I am going to pull my fabric through this bias tape maker. And you can kind of see how it starts folding on its own, and I'm just going to use my Easy Press to continue to pull it through. You don't have to have a bias tape maker to make your own bias tape. You can just fold the sides in. You can also look for Google like how to use a straight pin to make bias tape or something like that. And that's another method, but it's super simple, and I'll leave a link in the description on how I do bias tape. But I have these edges folded, and now I'm just gonna fold it in half again and matching those folded edges, if you will, and press those down. And that is what's going to make it into bias tape. It's cut on the bias and then it's folded. And bias just has a little bit more stretch. So that's why we like bias tape. And this bias tape is a little longer than you actually need. But that's good. It'll help keep or give you enough space to work with your vinyl. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my vinyl piece and I'm going to tuck it right inside the bias tape. You can kind of see how I'm just tucking it right inside that. You can pin this in place. Better yet, if you have clips, if you use sewing clips, that's really good. But it's kind of up to you. So you're going to put it in your machine and you're actually going to start just before the vinyl, just sewing just on the bias tape, the sections or the layers together, and you're going to back stitch. And then you'll stitch over your vinyl. And as you stitch, you just want to make sure that vinyl is tucked in, right? You want it to be between those layers really well. And vinyl can be really difficult to sew with if you don't have it between layers. And I'll show you a trick in a little bit on what to do when you just have to sew vinyl without any fabric in between it. Bias tape right on my vinyl, and I'm going to go ahead and press this to take out kind of the twist that's in it. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to stitch our strap. So we're going to fold it hot dog style, if you will, and stitch along the long edge. Make sure your right sides are together so the wrong side is facing up. And we're going to just stitch this right on the edge, not even quite a quarter of an inch. I'd say about 1/8 of an inch. And stitch it all the way down to the end. Okay, so that's kind of what it looks like. And then we're going to take our safety pin, and I like to use a big safety pin. That's just me personally. And we're going to turn it right side out. So I just went through one layer. I'm going to twist my safety pin inside. And I'm going to turn. So just continue feeding it through. You feed it a little bit and then you pull. You can kind of see how as you pull, it goes inside. And that's what you want. All right, and it will just turn itself right side out. It's kind of like magic. It's pretty awesome. All right, and now we're going to get our little easy press here, and we're just going to press all the way up the strap to get out all the wrinkles. We don't want any wrinkles. Everything looks better when it's pressed. And we'll just press all the way up to the top here. And once it's all nice and pressed, then we just can fold it in half, and that's what will make our strap. So pretty simple. So the next step is we're going to take our two main pieces and we're going to place them right side up, and we're going to put the pocket right in the middle, matching the bottom edge of the pocket and the bottom edge of one of the main pieces. And then we're going to take our strap and we're going to put those two raw edges together, kind of just see. And then I'm going to place it in the middle, right across the bottom of the pocket, and you can kind of see that here. Then I'm going to take my other main piece and place it over the top. So I have all those layers together. Now, I recommend you pin everything down. You want it all to stay in place when you're sewing, and vinyl tends to move in sewing, so anytime you can pin something or use your sewing clips, that's a good idea. Just keep all those pieces together and then make sure that strap is nice and centered when you go to pin it down. Okay. Now, you can see this guy is sticking out. I don't want that, so I'm actually just going to fold him in and then add my pins at the top because I don't want to accidentally sew him in. He needs, the top of the tag needs to be loose. Okay, so we're gonna stitch this, and we're actually gonna start over here and stitch all the way around and end at this pin. Okay, so we're gonna leave this here open. That's how we're gonna turn it right side up. So I'm just gonna put it all in my machine here, starting right above my pocket. I'm gonna back stitch. And I'm stitching on this one at about 1/4 of an inch because I want to make sure that I pick up all of the layers. And when I get to my tag here, oops. When I get to my tag here, I'm actually going to stitch over it and back. Excuse me, not my tag, on my strap. And that's just going to ensure, for me personally, that it doesn't move. And that when I'm putting it on my luggage, it doesn't accidentally yank out, right? It just gives it a little bit more security. Okay, stitch across the top here. Oops, fold it just a little. There you go, straighten it out. All right, and then I'm going to come stitch down just a little bit, and then I'm going to pull this out. All right, now we're going to trim up those threads, and we're going to cut off any of the extra that we have of our bias tape or our strap that's kind of hanging over the side. Just get rid of that bulk and make it easier to sew. And then we're going to clip all our corners at a diagonal. We just trim them down. Make sure you don't go through the threads. Just trim to the thread, not through it. And now we're going to turn it right side out. So we're going to find our little hole that we made. It should be about 1.5 inch hole. And we just pull the strap right through that hole. And we turn everything right side out. Sometimes it takes a little bit of tugging to get out what you need. All right, and then you just use your finger to kind of work things back into the corner. And I will often use like a pen or a wooden dowel or something to push my corners so that they get nice and straight, nice and nice square corners. I have a wooden dowel that I always use, but it seems to have walked away with my children somewhere. So that's what it looks like at the moment. Looks a little funky just because it needs to be ironed. So I'm just going to make sure that I flip this over before I iron because I do not want to melt the vinyl. So anytime that you're sewing with clear vinyl, you want to make sure that there's fabric between the layers. So I just flipped it over, easy enough. And now I can just press and make sure that everything's in the right place. That's what it kind of looks like. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch. And that means I'm going to stitch all the way around right on the edge, and that's going to close this opening off. But it's also going to make it so that when I put my tag inside, that it's going to stay in place a little bit better. Now, this is a tricky thing because the tags, because you're going to be sewing over this vinyl. So my suggestion is find a really thin piece of paper. You could use like a tissue paper, or this right here is actually a customs form for a package that my sister sent us recently. So I'm just gonna pin this through the fabric section. You're gonna see it's bigger here, but that's okay. And I'm gonna stitch all the way around, and then when I'm done, I can just pull this thin piece of paper off and it makes no difference. So I'm gonna start up here in the corner, and I'm just gonna stitch all the way around, right on the edge, all the way across to the other side. Keep going. And sometimes those sections that have the vinyl with the bias tape, you're gonna have to help your fabric through because it's just a little thicker of a section, and that's just fine. Okay, so this is what it kind of looks like right now. It kind of looks silly, right? So what I do is I start on the edge and I cut my paper. It's like a piece of serrated paper, right? Because you've sewn on it. But I try and get as much of that off, and then this inside section will just kind of pop off on its own. Sometimes it'll leave a little bit of residue behind. Residue's not the right word, but so you can kind of see over here on these sides. And then I just take my fingernail and pull at those sections a little bit, and the paper just usually comes right off. It's the same thing with tissue paper. It'll come right off. Okay, but now I have my little spot to put my information card, right? So this will come down, and you know, you won't see any of this. Okay, the last step. This is a step that scares people. You don't need to be afraid. We're gonna mark where we want to put our buttonhole. And you want it to be in the center. And you're gonna need it to be, it needs to be 1/4 of an inch wider than this. So if we're taking our little, this is 1/2 inch. So we want our buttonhole to be 3 1/4 inch. Okay, so we can mark it here at 3 1/4 inch, just like that. And I know it's kind of hard to see, but I've marked it. Okay, and so now I'm going to set my machine on a buttonhole. My buttonhole is over here. For most machines, you have to put it on all the way on 0 for the stitch length, but again, that depends on the machine. But you need to put it at where your machine says for your stitch length. And then mine here has numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 0. And as I sew, I just switch to each of the numbers, and it actually does the buttonhole for me. Switch it to number 1. And I'm going to start it on where my marking is. And move it down to my following marking. And then I'm going to make sure my needle's up, move to number 2. It's going to go back and forth with a zigzag in place. Make sure my needle's up, move to number 3, and it's going to come back up. My material will go all the way to the end. Make sure my needle's up, move to number 4, goes back and forth. Needles up, move to number 5, stitch about halfway down, needles up, move back to 0. See how easy that was? So much easier than you think. The machines are really set to basically make your buttonhole for you. Okay, so there's my buttonhole. It's not quite center, but that's all right. Sometimes that happens. Okay, and I'm just going to start it with my seam ripper, but I'm not going to finish it with my seam ripper because I've been known to rip right through my buttonhole I don't want to do that. So I'm just using my scissors, go right to the edge, make that hole. See, there's my cute little buttonhole. Now I just thread, loop it in there and pull, and there is my little luggage tag. So easy. And then you'll loop it into your luggage. I'm trying to see if there's something I can loop it into. Let's try with this. You'll loop it through, we'll pretend this is our luggage, and go here, and then pull, so it'll just kind of hang down like this. Okay, super, super simple. My husband said it's also a really great identifier. You know, I'm sure that you've been on a flight where you go to get your luggage and, you know, there's 3 people that have the same color luggage as you. So this is a great way to identify your luggage specifically. And it keeps your information private, but at the same time, it's really cute. So makes a really great stocking stuffer too. Anyway, that's how you make a luggage tag. Make sure you check out all the links in the description, the link to the pattern, the link to the easy press, the link to how to make your bias tape, all of those different things. If you have questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. We'll talk to you next time.